All right, man, we can do us some coffee right here. Get cranking.
Good coffee.
Yeah.
Good coffee.
Hey, like my shirt, man. 1960.
I like that. Is that when you were born?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you got me by 10.
Yeah. So you just turned 50?
Yesterday, 50. Over the hill, man.
Man, it's such a great decade.
Dude, man, I told Mindy I've never been happier in my life. Thank you so much, man. I've never been happier in my life than I am right now.
It's gonna get better.
Oh.
All right, here we go. True Brew Bobcast here at the end of Dayton Road in Cafe Dayton. I have my boy Roy Petitfils.
Brother. Cheers. Good to be here,
How
Bob.
you like that coffee, man?
Oh. And even though the company I know is better, that's some exceptional coffee.
So, a psychotherapist from Generate. All right, so we have to...
On some level, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so we're going to have to lay some building blocks here.
Yeah.
So how about if we just start off at maybe early teen Roy Petitfils in Generate, Louisiana, and bring us to your decision to become a psychotherapist.
Okay. Yeah, early teen. So I grew up, which is interesting because I grew up a couple of blocks from Lejeune's Bakery in Generate, which is kind of the one thing operating this real, and it's this iconic bakery. I mean, you know Lejeune's French bread. Everyone does in Louisiana now. And I grew up. My mom was a single mom, and she. It was very important for her that I got a good education, and she wasn't confident in the public system there at the time. So she worked 4 jobs, sent me to a school called St. Joe's. But by the time I'm an early teenager, I had switched to Catholic High in Iberia, which was an awesome experience. But I was a poor kid in a really affluent school. I really lacked a lot of social skills. It took me a while to find my way. I used food because my mom was always working. I used food as a way.
You had a single mom situation?
Single mom. I'm an only child. Yeah, my mom had an affair with my dad, who had another family in a part of Louisiana, and he just kind of didn't want to be in the picture. And she's like, "All right, no problem." And so
you took his last name?
I took her last name.
She's a Petitfils.
Oh, yeah, so she's the Petitfils. Yeah, my grandfather.
She said, you're not happy.
No, he didn't want to, you don't want to pay her play. You don't get naming rights. And
all right, so it's you and her against the world in Generate.
That's right. Me and her, and her and her family were close. But, my mom's decision to send me to Catholic High was a very controversial one in my family. They were like, "Oh, y'all are too good for public school," and they'd make little jabs at me here and there, and I think it was kind of like the crabs in the bucket syndrome a little bit, and not all of them. And look, I love my family. I do. I love them so much, but it was really important for her that I got a good education, and I did. Boy, I got a great one.
Was that out of her being desperate herself and her wanting her kid to excel in education? What was the motivation there?
Yeah, I think my mom was a very intelligent woman and, got a high school education, was a school secretary, bar hop, waitress, sold and collected insurance back in the day when you drove around and collected insurance payments.
She was hustling.
She was a hustler. She was smart. Even from when I was a little kid, like she would drill me on my multiplication tables, and she was a secretary. I knew how to type without looking at the keys when I was like 8, and it was just so important. Like that's what I did in my free time. And then, and my mom.
Who was your father figure then? I mean, was it just you and your mom, or did you
Just
have
me and
any
my mom.
male?
No, as a little kid, none. My aunts had, husbands, and but they weren't really father figures to me. I didn't spend a ton of time around them, and so no, I didn't have any real father figures, and that was tough. Yeah, that was really tough. Just trying to figure that all out. And
you remember being kind of confused back then?
Yeah, about just, what does it mean to be a man? And I certainly saw them. I mean, I had them as models, but a father figure in terms of someone who invested in me, spent time with me. A couple of my uncles did on occasion. He was really like a cousin, but I called him, my uncle LJ would take me fishing here and there, and I love to fish, but, I'd go once a year. And yeah.
So being a psychotherapist and looking back at yourself, I'm
Yeah.
sure you analyzed yourself. I mean, uh, like you was thinking like abandonment. So I mean, were you like playing out fantasies in your head about your dad, or what was going on
That's a
there?
good question, man. I don't think I did that. I was just trying to survive. I was so lonely. I got to reflect on that in my early 20s, what was going on back then, and even more so now. But back then, I was so lonely. I was bullied a lot
Why
for
were you
being
bullied?
poor. Well, because I used food as a coping mechanism. So I was obese. I was chubby as a kid, and then I got, overweight. And then by the time I'm in high school, I'm morbidly obese, over 500 pounds when I graduated
And
high
kids
school.
are brutal.
Oh, brutal. And look, there were some really good ones to me, and some of these guys are, we went fishing at Sycamore Point last weekend before last, and I keep in touch with those guys for the most part. There were a group of guys that were really great to me. But even still, I didn't get invited to everything, and I get
So
it.
you're dealing with trauma.
Oh yeah, no, multiple traumas. Had some mild, I'd call it mild sexual abuse. When I was a kid, just propositioned several times by kids who were friends of my mom's. And their parents were friends of my mom, and so I had a lot of trauma as a childhood,
Well, you was
as a
a
kid.
target. You was because they saw the struggles or the confidence deal that you and your
It's a
mom
good
was
question.
in.
I
I
think
mean,
I'm not sure if those people were predators. Kind of blocked a lot of that. I think I repressed a lot of that. But I remember on like a couple of instances, these young adult men coming up to me and like directly propositioning me, exposing themselves to me, and this is the first time I talk publicly about any of this, by the way. Like my whole life story is an open book. It's all on YouTube, but this is a part that so that was really traumatic, I think, for me. And but I think the loneliness, like my mom's really battled depression, and so I mean she worked so much, so when she was home she was sleeping.
so you think depression was the whole nature versus nurture thing? I mean, were you?
Mm,
You think
both.
this
No, it's both.
genetically predisposed because of
Yeah,
your mama?
I definitely do. I think OCD runs in my family. My grandmother would hide when people would come over to the house, and she'd tell me to hide, and I was like, what was that about? Like, I think she probably had an anxiety disorder. Not sure what was going on there, but anxiety, as a client of mine's dad told me a while back, he goes, anxiety doesn't run in our family, it gallops. Gallops. I thought that was it's funny. I thought that was hilarious. And it definitely gallops in mine.
So
But
anxiety.
depression, only my mom. Like I really only saw my mom battle that. And
So now that you clinician, you
hmm
clinicking
hmm
depression and anxiety.
that's right.
Okay, you just turned 50.
Yeah.
So your retrospect is your mother still with us?
Mm-mm. She passed away in 2000.
So looking back now as a mature man, was it clinical depression?
Well, the secondary cause of death on our death certificate by Dr. Paul Toss was depression, and I remember on
Wow.
her deathbed, she was septic, but I remember on her deathbed, we're there, and he points to her, and where she could hear her, he goes, "This woman could live. She's choosing not to live because she refused to take Prozac." I think it was Prozac at the time, but he's like, we have antidepressants, but she's refusing to take them. And that is a unique hole of depression.
So, do you think the depressed mind, shuts down the body, and it's an actual cause of death on a death certificate?
I believe it
New
absolutely
to me.
can shut down the body.
And that's how your mama died.
Well, my mom was diabetic. She was type 2 diabetic, but which is manageable with lifestyle, and we were always told it was manageable. But the depression causes overeating. My mom back when she had in 1973, you're an unwedded mom of a kid. Nobody knows the dad. That's shameful and embarrassing. And I don't know how much my family shamed her. I just didn't have the awareness to know.
Self-shame.
Oh, self-shame. And again,
that bled to you. I mean, you felt it. You were around it. You were part of it.
Absolutely felt it. And I didn't understand what was going on. And I think what the piece for me as a kid was I internalized my mom's depression, which meant she just doesn't like me and want to be around me. And I look back and I knew my mom loved me, but I thought she'd just rather sleep, than hang around me.
Was she medicated?
Never.
Did they have decent drugs back then?
I don't think they had decent drugs in the 1970s. I think they had.
I remember Mama. Just take a nerve pill, babe.
Yeah, that's right. And she had that too.
What the hell was a nerve pill?
Take a nerve pill. I listen because when I try to get a family history with my clients of mental health history, it'll be interesting. And now I've got a generation that is a little more psychologically aware. But when I first started about 15 years ago, people go, yeah, I guess my mom and dad were wound a little tight. That's what they called it. They were wound a little tight. That means anxiety. My mom had mood swings. She was really moody. Doesn't necessarily mean bipolar, but could be like low-grade depression. But the medications we, I think, had in the 70s were old tricyclics that I use one every once in a while for sleep called trazodone. And it's an old serotonin agent. Works really good, but it'll knock you out. And so that's not
So, Roy, okay, so how hardwired is a kid? Okay, so I think of legacy parenting. We'll get into parenting a little bit. So your mom's legacy parenting, she probably was parenting you like sort of a version of how she was parented. Probably systemic type of traditional anxiety and trauma passed on to her. And so, how much therapy, or can you correct that, or do you learn how to deal with it? What's as a clinician, what do you think?
And the answer, and this is why you're going to have a hard time pinning down a lot of therapists, because we'll probably say both. You learn how to manage it. Anxiety, especially, you learn how to manage it, and then for certain people, medications, help. But in therapy, what are the core beliefs you internalized? What are your behavior patterns? Have you over-identified with the anxiety or the depression? And they're both really hard to treat, because a lot of folks like anxiety because it protects their fear of failure, which kind of drives them to be successful. And so, they'll say, I want to get rid of anxiety, but what they really want to get rid of is the panic attacks. And they don't understand that their anxiety makes them feel safe. And so when we start to loosen the grip on it, they'll whoa, it's like the ground moved underneath them. It's like, oh, I don't know that I like that. And
they rather be at a heightened state.
That's right. A lot of times they'll rather be at a heightened state.
So they'll create drama.
That's right. And with depression, you can't think your way into a new way of feeling. You've got to behave your way into a new way of feeling. And certain times medication will help. The biggest role that I see for medication with depression is when there's suicidality on the table, and we have to be real careful of that. Because if you've got a patient with a real ideation who really wants to die and has for a while, the medication could elevate their mood enough to where they could complete it. And so that's what the black box warning means. So but when there is some suicidality, that sometimes medication can be really helpful in elevating them out of that hole. And then it can help folks get to a place where they can do the therapy. So find ways to not isolate, get your body moving, get in the sun, start doing some things that make you happy, get off of marijuana or, some other substances that could be contributing, to that. Alcohol is a huge depressant, opiates, obviously. So it can sometimes help folks to move in that direction. And then do the therapy, and
All right, let's go. Let's pick up on Little Roy Petitfils. So now becoming a young adult. You still in Generette?
we had moved to Iberia. Our house burnt down when I was in the 10th grade. And so I'd already been at Catholic, and we moved to New Iberia. And that was good. I was closer to my friends. And
Was things getting better, or did you ever enter that dark box you were talking about? Do you remember a time where you might have been
oh, yeah,
that low?
I would say my 8th grade freshman year of high school, I was, no, 8th grade, I think, I was very suicidal. We had a little 410 shotgun hanging above the mantle, and yeah, I didn't attempt it. But I was toe dipping, in that realm, and
So walk me through that. So because your brain wasn't fully developed, you're 8th grade, your hormones are coming down the pipe, and so how does that? Do you recall? Is it like little fantasies that go on, where you're saying, is it like you just want to escape this? Was it depression? I mean,
yeah,
how would you?
yeah, depression. I probably had some undiagnosed ADHD, inattentiveness, and so school was certain things in school that school was difficult for me.
Socially or
So all
or
of the
academic?
above. Academically, I was in some honors classes. School, I should couch that. School was not as difficult for me as like kids who have really severe ADHD and learning disabilities, and but school was really difficult for me because of my depression with a little ADHD for sure, and so the academics were hard. But what I always found, this is where I think the ADHD came in, was that I'd do well in spurts and then I would just drop it and I couldn't sustain it. I would start focusing on something else, not like squirrel, like oh squirrel, like I couldn't, but I would go and get into something else.
Were you afraid to succeed in this thing, or your interest just shifted?
That's a great question. I don't know if I was afraid to succeed. I think I wanted to do better academically because I was in honors classes, but I was at the bottom rung. I was in a couple of them. I was at the bottom rung, and then my junior and senior year, I didn't make the grades, and I was out of it.
But did you have anyone that you want to emulate at this? Not now that you almost an adult. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
I actually,
where are you trying to get to at this point?
yeah, I'm again that. So I don't think I was trying to really get to anywhere.
You were
It
still
was the
surviving
I was still surviving, man. Now,
17 years old.
what did come along, and this is an interesting piece I always forget to talk about because this is great. I really appreciate this free therapy session.
Who said it's
Normally,
free, man?
normally this costs me money. Who said it's free? I'm gonna need videos from you, boy. I had gotten in 8th grade. There was Catholic High had two things that I remember being so good for me that both scared the hell out of me. It was the science fair and speech night. So once a year there was speech night for middle school students, and I got up there in 8th grade in the Catholic High Library and delivered Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech.
Nice.
And got a rousing applause. And I remember never being more terrified in my life and never being so lit up in my life. Like, I loved
I
that.
need more of this.
Oh boy, I need more of that. Joined the speech and debate team the next year in high school, And
Please tell me you didn't try to do the Martin accent while you did.
I did not. I did
Okay,
not.
fine,
No,
good.
I didn't.
I was getting nervous.
Thank goodness.
All right.
Yeah, no, I did not. I did not. It was very passionate. I didn't even really fully understand. I mean, you just don't, understand fully. But did speech and debate. Really loved that. I loved arguing. My mom thought that was a natural for me. It really developed my analytical brain of just taking things apart and my ability to read. So that was really good for me.
Would that be the root system of you heading towards psychotherapy? It sounds kind of like it.
Perhaps. It was, and then, after, we'll get to the seminary part later, but in terms of developing how I think and how I approach things, seminary was big in that because we had to write so much in it. But yeah, so I was surviving. Speech and debate tournaments were good. I had lots of friends. I had probably more friends from ESA on my speech and than I did at the Catholic. I had some friends at Catholic, but I had really good friends at ESA, and I'd go hang out with them. And that was I see that with my clients today. When they're not a great fit where they are, they go find a fit over here, and then it just makes things a little worse where they are.
So you're finding your tribe.
I'm finding my tribe, and again, what's interesting is that this whole time I think I'm stupid, but my friends.
So where did that come from, though? I mean, that was a beatdown, bro.
It was, I think. And I remember being tested for gifted when I was in kindergarten and in first grade.
So your mom was just rock. So she's a hustler. She's not afraid to get out there and make things happen, put food on the table. But was her self-esteem jacked up?
Yeah,
It was a shame thing.
Yeah, I
and
think
so. You were picking up on those
That's a
frequencies
good point.
right there.
That's right. I was, and it's modeled for you. And self-deprecating talk, those types of things. And again, I'm in school with kids. I mean, the folks who were in most of my classes. One of my best friend went study Jeremy Freyu. He went and studied history at Oxford. The guys who were like doctors and lawyers, these kids were like really, really bright. And so I'm comparing myself to them. I'm comparing myself to the Emma, the Taylor, and the Thomas Lukes, and I'm not quite making the cut. And so I'm like,
I know that feeling with that.
Right. Preach, brother. I was like, I still feel inferior on those kids, man. So I think that's where the I'm not smart thing came from.
But they were your buddies.
They were,
So
all of my
clearly
friends
they looked
were.
at you as a peer, as a.
That's right.
But
Yeah,
you couldn't accept that for yourself.
Like I just couldn't.
So they
I
didn't
didn't
affirm
really-
you. They didn't give you affirmation back
Not
then.
really, and I don't know that's just not how we were. That wasn't the level of societal
You old
consciousness.
school, bro.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm 50. I know you got me by 10, but like it just wasn't our level of consciousness in Iberia Parish at the time. Of going and saying, hey, and I was a kid, and that's why I had moments of brilliance in football. And if coaches would have known how to coach me, I would have been. That would have really helped me. I
So
did not
can we-
respond well to negative.
Can we pause right there? Because, again, being old school, it was schoolyard. The strong will survive.
That's right.
Pecking order. You're gonna survival of the fittest. And so my generation that talks about the snowflakes and the and by the way, that's on us. We're the parents of this. And sort of that's kind of how the whole cafe thing came about, is that I feel like I need to have some making up to do to teach them how to communicate. But it's real easy for me to say, surviving all that's the way you do it. You just you're gonna get tough because the tougher of the group is gonna make you tough. When now that my parenting has taken a back seat because my kids have moved on, my dad was one of 13 kids. 13 kids. And his father died when the baby was in diapers. Big old, that's another podcast. And so he was the oldest son, and he had to become a man pretty quick. And so, and he's my hero. He was the best man in my wedding. And so everything that he says, I really dial it in. And so when I became a father, he said he never had long-winded advice on anything. He says, parent who the child is. Okay, you can't parent everybody the same. Certain things you can, when it comes to virtues, and I mean, a lie's a lie, la la la. But this kid might need to be challenged. This kid might need to be disciplined a little more. This kid needs to be loved on a little more. Right. Everybody's emotions there's a range. But back in the day, it seemed like the alpha masculine dudes controlled the gymnasium.
Yeah.
And so what did we learn from that? I mean, because old school would say that's the way you do it. I look back and I'm like, I don't know if that's the right way to do it. And I mean, where's your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I think team sports are awesome. I think I want to disclaim, I think part of my issue was that I was an only child. And so I never had to learn how to share, as a kid. And even though we were dirt poor, I went to Catholic High on scholarship. My mom couldn't afford to pay for that. But I never had to learn how to share. I was deeply insecure, didn't like myself. And so when I got harsh criticism, it just made me not like you when it was harsh. So like coaches calling me a fat ass, like you just need to fucking lose weight, fat ass, like go on a diet. I'm like, oh, I never thought of that, asshole. That shut me down. That didn't open me up. And where they're like, and I remember when I had like really a guy who was older than me. I don't remember his first name, Mr. Gilbo, Josh Gilbo's dad, and he was a good guy, and he'd come up to me. He was just a dad. He wasn't even a coach, and would come up to me and say, hey, just try doing this, try doing that. And I had some good baseball coaches who were like, if you just make this tweak, like they would go and work with me like with a ball on a rope, and then that next game I'd hit 3 home runs. And I responded really well to positive reinforcement, some quality time, just because I had no men who invested any real time in me. In high school, I had probably the biggest high school mentor, male role model I had was Dr. Donald Voorhees, who was a legend. He's a legend math teacher, and I did great. He was in charge of science fair. I did well in math and those types of things. But
you were responding to his positive feedback.
That's right. You give me some positive attention, a little bit of I'm gonna roll. An English teacher in college, I got a B+ on a Beowulf paper, and I freaking hated that. And she was just like, you have you're a good writer. Keep up the good work. And boy, that landed deep. And today I sit here having written 10 books, published 7. Written a lot of columns, and I go back to that.
Isn't that amazing?
Dr. Iskander, I taught her daughter at St. Thomas More, Dr. Iskander. I still remember it. I can still see it.
30 seconds of praise.
Boom.
Shot you on a whole nother trajectory.
Boom.
See, that's the universe.
So the difference between that, where I was when I was 18 and took that 17 or 18 when I got that paper, fast forward 13, 14 years to grad school, I had written 3 books before I went back to grad school for counseling and published an internationally syndicated column. And I got a B- on a paper from a professor. And I love this woman to death, Dr. Teresa Wozencraft. And she's like, not, I don't know. It wasn't critical. I just got a B-. And I'm like, I responded. I was like, I'm going to show her. I was like, where was that when I was like in high school. I just didn't have that. I didn't have that, oh, I'm going to prove you wrong. Whereas I did in my early 30s. And, I know where that comes from.
So how long did you hold this anger? I mean, do you still
Oof.
hold a little bit?
I feel like I look, and things change, right? I don't know that it's linear. But as I sit here today, I feel like I hold the least amount of anger that I've ever held in my life.
But
And
who were you mad at?
I think I was mad at my family. I was mad at my dad. So
Did you ever meet your dad?
I never met him. He died when I was 7. I had a friend of mine who found out. I knew his name. I knew where he was from. Found out that information and went to his grave a couple of times, and he and I kind of had it out. I really went there to pee on his grave, but I didn't, and I actually sat there because of one of my biggest mentors and father figures, not the biggest, but one of them, Dan Jarrett, who was in my, we worked together for 12 years. He told me to take the baptism account, and so I went and sat at the grave, and I read, Jesus, like the Father saying to Jesus, "You are my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased." And I read that, and it started pouring down raining, and in this little country graveyard, and that was a very freeing moment. I was angry at my mom for the longest time. I was angry at the people who bullied me, and in high school, and some of them unmercifully. But I've been angry in the last few years at people who have misunderstood me and misunderstood my intentions. And this is where when I get angry today, it's because you're messing with kids. Like, I went in a courtroom a few years ago and had to testify as an expert witness in a real nasty custody case, and the judge, Susan Thayall, looks at me and she goes, Mr. Petitfils, like, are you all right? I was like, don't with kids, don't with kids, because that, like, just don't do it. Don't, especially the least understood of them and those on the periphery, because that still. I mean, I'm getting emotional about it even now.
Well, you should.
Just don't do it. Because I felt like I didn't have anyone to protect me from that. And I will irrationally sometimes step out and want to protect them. So those things make me angry. But, I just told my wife yesterday, I'm like, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Thank you for sharing that. That's and being vulnerable, and clearly you're able to harness that. But I can't help but sit here to think, and just listening to your story, fascinating. Um, how else would you be the psychotherapist and the defender
Right.
of the marginal?
Right.
Had you not gone through it.
That's exactly
So,
right.
call it what you want.
Oh, yeah.
Call it anything you want, but you're serving your ikigai, your mission in life. But someone who didn't go through that, they can study it, they're reading it from a book, they're doing all that. There's no way they can apply it. It's like me trying to coach a drug addict or something. If I haven't been there.
Same. Can't do it. Someone who overeats, I can absolutely, walk with them. But no, you're right. And I think there's a point, and this is where I think we who are older and a little wiser now, and I'll see folks walking through it, and they'll be in their 30s. And I know that what they're going through, in 10 to 20 years is going to be a huge asset to them, and whether you call it God, a higher power, or whatever, or life, on universal unconsciousness, whatever works for you, will use that for a much greater good. Every single ounce of pain, struggle I've ever had in my life is absolutely been used and mined in what I do in my work as a father, as a husband, as a friend, especially in my clinical work, with young people.
Okay, so you're moving out of high school. Where it seems like you're taking a few curved turns to get where you're at. So
Yeah,
kind of
I go to
walk us through
UL,
that.
like I graduate near the bottom of my class. I think I had a really bright class too. I know I did. I graduated in the bottom half of my class, and so I go to UL and move into the dorms and make some new friends there, which is awesome. And I majored in beer and ping pong, and like we would go out a lot and didn't do well freshman semester. First didn't do well and lost all my Pell Grants. And so Dr. Ray Audemars invited me to take some time off to rethink my career goals. And so I go out and work at the Port of Iberia, and I'm working for a company called Floor Daniels, and I start off picking up trash as a laborer. And then one day, this redneck who's standing in the middle of the road. I don't know if you've ever heard this part of my story. It's one of the best. This David, and he's got a white hard hat on with blue stripes, which meant I knew he was a general foreman, and the blue stripes like he was an iron worker. And if there's a hierarchy on construction sites, and there is,
Right.
laborers are at the bottom, and the iron workers are at the top.
Right.
Just their special breed of human being.
Salute and take your orders.
Oh yeah, buddy. And he's standing there looking at me like what is it? And he looks at me and he says, "Tiny." That was my nickname. And he says, "Get over here, boy." He's from North Alabama, and I go and he takes the white stripes off my hard hat, and he pulls out a roll of blue electrical tape and puts blue stripes, and he says, "You come and work for me, son." And I'm like looking up at this like oil derrick thing that's like miles, I don't know how high it was. And I'm like looking at how I'm 500 pounds. I was like, I'm flattered. But there's no way that I'm going to get up there without a defibrillator. And he goes, "I'm not putting you up on the steel, dummy." He goes, "I just want you to go and work in my boat shed." And I was like, "Oh, that rhymes with shade." I was like, I'm all in. And so I would clean the boats, and all the guys had to come in there, and they kept their food in my little fridge, and I had hot coffee for them. It was awesome. And though I became friends with those guys, we'd go hang out at the RV park at night because they all lived in, travel trailers. And like it was just amazing, and they didn't seem to care that I weighed. They noticed that I weighed 500 pounds, but they didn't care. Like they make fun of me, but I knew it's the difference between someone, it came from a good place. And I was like shopping for dualies and travel trailers, and I was going to become what they call themselves road whores. I was going to be a road whore. Like I was like, this is a compelling vision for my life. And then I walk in the next day to work, and my foreman, David, hands me a pink slip, and he says, "Tiny, you're ROF'd." And I was like, I knew I was effed. But, and he says, "We laid you off," which was a big deal because that meant they couldn't hire for 6 weeks. And he said, "I pulled every string I had to get you that." And I was like, "I thought you guys liked me." He goes, "We do like you, son. That's why we're getting rid of you." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he shoves a big Klein leather tool bag in my chest, which we had stolen from the electricians. Right. And he drags me by my shirt collar, and he pulls me to the edge of the boat shed, and I hear all these big Manawatt cranes shutting down. And it's the middle of the day, and about 50 to 100 people are just walking up all over this job site, and they don't have their hard hats on, which, as you know, was a terminal offense, right? And they all come up, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Tiny, I'm not a man of words, but on behalf of the hungover trailer trash here in Gathering, we know that since you've been on this here job, you done ate or drank away every penny you made." And I was like, "I have." And he says, "So we took up a little collection to send your big butt back to college."
Really?
And I was like, "Dude, I've already been to college and flunked out. I don't need to do that." And he goes, "Yeah, you do." He says, "Look, Tiny, you come in here and you sit your ass on the 3 5-gallon buckets, and you're quoting this French guy, Shakespeare, and using words nobody knows what in the hell you're talking about, and you're going back." And those guys come up one by one, and they start dumping hard hats full of cash.
Really?
And that Klein leather tool bag. And they're like, "Good luck, Tiny. Never let us see your big ass out here again." And I'm wanting
That's
to cry.
big.
Oh, dude, I went back in my truck and I counted it. It was over like $5,000.
Are you serious?
I am not kidding.
That's
This
real
is
money back.
1992. It's a lot of money. It paid for everything for me to go back to college for over a year. And I was just weeping. And I remember that was a very drastic moment where someone saw more in me than I could see in myself. Doc Voorhees had, so many other people had in my life. Ernest, Deanna Freyu, Jeremy Freyu, Tracy Como, Albert Polk, Jerry Mullins, so many people, Ted Vadrine, and his whole family, like just all my good friends that I had, in high school, but I just couldn't see it. And so that drastic moment. And so I go back, and these guys bribed me. I had left the Catholic Church, and these guys bribed me with donuts to go to the Catholic Student Center. And I walk in there, and
That's where it started.
my wife's in there.
Wait, that's where you met her?
Mm-hmm. I'd actually met her, a year before that, at a George Strait concert, because she was dating my best friend at the time. Yeah, this is a little soap opera thing, but anyway, we didn't get together until they had broken up for like 5 years, and but it was 3 or 5 years, I can't remember, and it was awkward. It was really awkward, and he even to this day has just been such a prince about it, and his whole family, who were so good to me, and but this priest, Father Hampton Davis, comes up to me and says, "Something tells me you like to eat." I was like, "Yeah," and he said, "We're going. There's a pizza place that has a pizza called a T-Rex, Dino's."
Oh, yeah.
And I'd never eat. It's got 7 different kinds of meat, and I was like, "I'm listening." And he says, "We're all going for lunch. Why don't you join us?" And I'm like, "I'm in." He's 6'4", 260 dehydrated. I'm 6'2", 500, and he's driving a 1989 Honda Accord. I don't know how the hell we got.
Project.
Oh, it was a physics problem. And so we go in there, and I was fascinated. I'll tell you because it's funny. I remember I was wearing I was fascinated with Garth Brooks, and so I had a big old Garth Brooks hat, had a shirt like he wore, so a 7X version of it. I went to a pawn shop and got a big belt buckle. It had a guy riding a Bronco Bull, and it said 3rd place. So I go in there, and I'm like bullshitting one of these guys. They were like, "Man, you were in the rodeo?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then Father Hampton goes, "That must have been a big damn bull." And I was like, "No, I wasn't. Obviously, wasn't in the rodeo." And but those people became my lifelong friends. And some of my high school friends were also hanging around there too. But Father Hampton Davis is if there's 2 figures in my life who are people who are hinge moments that got me from where I started to where I am now, the first one's my mom, and then the second one is him. And
but isn't it amazing? This group of rednecks. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, that doesn't happen.
I know,
You're not eating donuts. You this and that. So
yeah, that doesn't happen.
It's
and people ask me all the time when I give talks and share that story, like, have you ever seen them? And like, I don't remember their last names.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Changed my life. And that was awesome.
So, all right. So you're there. You go to school, and then
A couple of years, and then I go to seminary because I want to be just like Father Hampton. And I used to wanted to be a priest when I was a kid, and then just kind of lost that. And I'd go to seminary. I was in seminary for 5 years, and the last 2 of which in the Vatican, at an American seminary in Rome. And but I just couldn't shake the desire for celibacy. While I was in seminary in Covington at the Abbey, I had lost about 300 pounds, and had to get a surgery that the doctor did for free. My skin was hanging down below my knees. My back was hanging down too, and at the time she said it was the most aggressive skin removal surgery they had done. Did it for free flew in doctors from across the country to come and watch.
Where'd they do this?
This was at a hospital. I think it was Our Lady of the Lake in Mandeville. And really aggressive. I was in the hospital for a few days, and yeah, and that was just another generous moment of that Father Hampton Davis was pretty instrumental in making happen for me. And
How old were you?
I think I was 23 when I had that surgery, 23, maybe 24. And then I go to Italy. Yeah, I think I came back from Italy at 26, and that's when I started at STM, and which was another really, when I was there, I learned so much about people. I made lifelong friends. Yeah, when I left seminary, I probably stayed an extra year because I just didn't want to disappoint him. And I know that was never possible. And when I left, he's like, okay. He was going to come to Rome we were going to travel around Europe together for the turn of the century. It was 99 into 2000. But when I had come home, he was like, we'll go mountain climbing this summer. And we went on a 2-week, mountain climbing adventure in the Rockies. That was awesome. And yeah, that was just so good. And around that time, I left and pretty much started dating my wife right away.
So now you're in your upper 20s.
I'm in my upper 26, 27. And I think I know how to teach because I was in school a while, and no one was impressed with all my theological knowledge, and that was a watershed moment. I was like, oh, this didn't work. Like, I went in, destroyed a really good campus ministry program in my first year, ripped it apart. I was young and arrogant and wanted to prove myself and thought I knew everything, and which is a problem today in a lot of ministry areas, and just went in and wreaked havoc. And a year later, I went groveling back and apologizing to the 3 people, good people, Father Joe Bro, Charlie Masicek, Becky Trumps, and others, and just and then brought them on board. I was like, okay, teach me. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I know a little bit, but like, I need help. And then together we built some things and put some things in place that are still there to this
Programs,
day.
great programs.
Great programs. Kairos,
Hey, look,
very inclusive.
I was
that your kids.
my kids went through all
one.
that stuff, and I sure appreciate it. It's very, very well done. So, what would a 50-year-old Roy go tell 13-year-old Roy in next to Lejeune's Bakery? What would you say when you was in 8th grade in that dark box? What would you tell him?
You just need to hang on. This is what I would, if you want to know what I would tell him, I'd drop the F-bomb. I was like, hang on. Because I can't emphasize, hang on. This is going to turn around. You're going to feel good enough at some point in time. You're going to get what you need. You're running on empty right now. You don't know what it's like to live with fuel in your tank. In your late teens, this thing is going to start to turn around. And it really kind of started turning around my senior year, at Catholic. And then I had friends, and I was happy my freshman year. I was unproductive as hell, but my freshman year of college, and then I went and worked, and it was hard work, but met those people, and then like, just hang on, and I mean, the last 3 years the person I would really want to go back and talk to is the 46-year-old Roy, who got crushed in 2000, like, lost both of my businesses, counseling disappeared. I was speaking all over North America frequently. That just went away for 2 years.
COVID,
completely gone. Yeah, the guy who got COVID 7 times, and the guy who almost 2 years ago fell off a bike, broke all his ribs, who was really in as dark a place as I was my freshman year of high school. Darker. I was like, wow. Like, I felt worthless. Like, I was that bad off. I would go back and tell him, this too shall pass.
And so you think you're pulling from those old emotions that was way down in there, and then all of a sudden
Those
the
old tapes,
self doubts
those old
and all
tapes
that
that
shit.
got stopped and put on the shelf, got back on the tape recorder, and started playing back again. And it was just, I just everything, and it was a huge moment of emotional and even spiritual growth for me, because I realized I was riding my self-esteem and my self-worth was still riding on things I'd accomplished. I gave a TED talk. I was a very highly sought after counselor. I could have seen kids, if our laws allowed it. I had people from all over the world reaching out to me to counsel their kids. People who were willing to fly in from other countries, for me to work with them. I was as high in terms of my career and felt like, was doing so good. I was able to exercise, like my body. I was able to move. I was the lightest I was going into 2018, the healthiest I was. And then in 2020, my career, the successes, my body just started going down and down and down.
So is it your ego that you arm wrestling with all the
I
time?
guess I think it was certainly it was my ego, and I was over identified with my accomplishments and what I did. And I remember I was laying in the bed, like I had just looked at the life insurance to see if there was like a clause in it. Like I wasn't quite convinced, but I was almost convinced that my family would just be better off without me. That I had a good run, and based on my series of health problems, I was like, I'm not. I mean, I probably only have 15 more years anyway. I mean, like that's just how dark I was. That's the lie of the depression. And my wife,
going back to your mom, do you think how much of this is chemical, how much is it genetic, and you're self-aware, you're a professional,
I'm on medicine.
You know all the things.
I'm taking medicine, and I'm also aware of what my medication limits are through the genetics. And but it was, and I isolate, and that's what during COVID it already isolated us, and then when my depression kind of kicked in, I would isolate more and more, isolated from people, and people did reach out, and I just didn't respond, and it was ugly, and then and not long after that bike accident, I got canceled, and I really don't want to go into that, but my business just dried up overnight. And I, at the end of it, lost about $70,000 to $80,000, and I'm like, I'm done. Like, it wasn't so much, I didn't even have that. Like, I was like, oh, wow, I'm definitely not above that. And I ended up surviving it. I remember my wife sat down on the bed, and I was just like, because she could just see I was in a hole, and she was worried about me, and I was just like, I think y'all are better off without me. And she just busted into tears and, said it. And then a few weeks ago, she said it again. She just said, I just want you to know, even if all you could do is lay in a bed.
She needs you, bro.
We love you, and our lives are enriched by who you are.
Yes, sir.
And you're a stabilizing force in the house. You bring levity to it. And without you, I would be like a real serious bitch, as she said. And I don't think that's true, but it was so, so powerful. And I was, a few weeks ago, I've been really out of it for a while, and my counseling practice resurfaced. I've got more speaking than I could and want to take again, and that was a journey, man. Like, I got really dark again, and now I'm at a much better place, and just I'm proud of what I do. I am. I think I'm confident.
Sure, no
I
doubt.
feel,
Absolutely.
I know I'm good. I know I could be better and learn. But I'm pretty secure today way more secure in who I am.
So if you were to say, how are you managing your mental health and stability, it's not what I'm picking up on. It's never one clear answer.
Oh, no.
It's layers of. So you need physical health, you need a good diet, you need to be self-aware, you need some medication,
You got to have friends, you got to engage your social network.
So that's my question to you. So clearly there's plenty of people out there, similar struggles. So what happens when they don't have a support system like you have? I mean, that to me is where it gets scary.
And so you definitely, and one of the things that I did was for about 5 or 6 months, I stopped seeing my therapist. And I'd been in therapy at least once a month for the last 20 years. So I went back, and I think that is, if you don't have it naturally, then engage the help of someone who can help you create that, because you're going to need some help. And that's one of the things that I do is help say, oh, what about this?
Yeah.
Could you join that?
Yeah.
Could you go here? Well, I know you don't want to be a part of it, and I know it's awkward, but the alternative to awkward is dying, like slowly or quickly, and this hole of depression. And so you might have to go and create it, and you may have to create it with people that you really don't like, that you like just enough, and they may not be your, ride or dies, but they're better than nothing. And they'll let you down too. And so you're right. It's really hard for people who don't have the support network. It is, but it's possible, I think, in a lot of instances.
Let's get into that a second, Roy. Is because that's really your expertise. So, I'm a parent, and I have teenage kids coming down the pipe, and it's just a different world than we grew up with. I mean, everybody blames the phone and social media and this and that, but just the pure amount of information that these children filter through their brains, and then they taking gut shots to their psyche and their confidence, and especially the daughters, the girls. Speak on that a little bit. Like, if you were to, well, let's start with this too. There's no parent school out there.
Right.
We all just
have
anybody can have children, and then now you're raising children. You don't get a certificate or anything to be a parent. Matter of fact, my experience is parents doesn't like to be criticized or coached or anything or anything. They nobody likes to hear that baby's ugly, and so you have that. So, but if you had a captured audience of young parents where kids are...
How old would their kids be?
Their kids would be formative, fixing to get into that middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah, here's what I would tell them. There's a few things, like just real practically speaking. And this is going to be... I'll start with this because it's very contrarian. It's very contrarian right now. I'm not even sure my wife agrees with me. Kids don't need you to be at all their stuff. They need you to be at the vast majority of it. But they don't need you to be at all of it. Like, some parents will break their back and show up to something and be a complete asshole because of everything they've got. Like, just don't go. Much better for you to miss one of what will probably be 1,000 baseball games.
And or important for them to gain their independence.
You've got to have something that you find enjoyable, and this is even if you're a single parent. Like, you don't need to make it all. It's important, and some people over-index on that. You've got parents who are very selfish, and that's a bad way of labeling it. I have too much empathy to throw that out, but who are just more self-centered. They're working through their own wounds and aren't giving the kid as much attention, and they need to scale it back. So that's one of the things, to find a good balance between, if you're in a relationship, having a good relationship with your partner or spouse or whatever, and if not, finding one or making yourself happy, and then giving to your kids. That's one. Secondly, I would say if you've got, let's say, 9 and 10-year-olds who are probably boys or deep into video games at that point. Some of them are deep.
How
I would tell
dangerous is
them
that?
they're not, well, you know, we know that the violent video games don't necessarily produce violent behavior. That's been studied at length. But the dopamine activation that happens in video games, I would tell them don't let them game for more than 2 hours at a time. Put restrictions on the video games, right? Put some restrictions like 2 hours and then go and take an hour break. Get outside, and that's going to be hard with kids who are more indoorsy, who are more tech oriented, and you can just see they're going to gravitate to that. And a lot of those kids become, you know, computer scientists and you know, very techy and do more those types of things. But even they need to be outside, and so put the reins on that. And then, but the biggest one is, I don't have my phone on me. Oh, I do. Before you put this in their hands, which you're about to do in middle school if you haven't already, be very careful. Like, you talk to as many parents as you can who have put this in the
Grab
kids'
that
hand.
phone, monitor that phone,
Oh
control
boy.
that phone.
And then, like, don't, you know, the big push, and I still think that's relevant, and it might go to 7. It gets, there's a balance with social media. And like, if you're going to send your kid like to a big school, and our kids go to Turlings, but you know, I was at STM, but you know, either one of those are, you know, you're going to send them to like a big high school. If you're not homeschooling them and you're putting them out there,
It's coming. It's
by the
happening.
time they're in freshman year, if they don't have Snapchat on their phone, they're going to be one of a 1%. They're going to be in the 1 to 3 percentile of kids who don't have it. And yes, they can text because we text. But
So what are the numbers showing? Like, what is like because this been going on. These smartphones been around 15 years or more. What are the numbers showing for those early adults? Is how is it affecting them?
oh, that's a good question. I think, well, I mean, a lot of it. There's a lot of research on attention span, and so social media. But social media are things like Instagram, Facebook, and primarily Snapchat. Then you've got media, you know, YouTube. I don't call that necessarily social media. TikTok, I don't think that's social media because there's not a lot of interaction. They're posting things on it, and they are looking for responses if they're a poster, but most of the time they're receiving. The social media piece is that it, well, you've got real concerns about safety because there are online predators. I think because kids don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, and that's what I continue to go over with my son. I was like, you know, before you put anything out there, you better really think that through because it can
That's
be
like an
really
appendage
hurtful.
to them. Like they can't
Yeah.
even function without
That's
it.
right.
They're like their
Yeah.
brain is that is part of the brain.
It is, and they grew up. I mean, they grew up on screens, you know, and we enabled that. And so again, and it's really complex. It's not simple. You know, I hear folks calling them, you know, snowflakes. No, that's a secondary insult. You need to look to that parenting generation and call those
That's
the
what I'm saying.
enablers. So before you
Agreed.
call those kids snowflakes, call their parents permissive
But Roy,
enablers.
this is where I mean, my twins are 26, Emma's 23, so they're not that far out of the nest. And so my dilemma was always, you know, it was kind of like when we were growing up. Why do I have to learn this math when I have a calculator right here? And they're like, well, because you're teaching your brain how to do that. And so, okay, I get it. I'll even buy off on it. You're training your brain how to critically think, to do this, to come up with a problem. I'm never going to use that. And you know what? I never had to use it.
That's
but
right.
you train your brain to learn how to solve a problem. I get that. But now, it was back in the day, it was a rite of passage to overhaul a Briggs and Stratton lawnmower motor. You had to know how to do it, dude. You had to know how to do it. I was raised on a sugarcane farm. You had to learn all that stuff. But my kids, if they need to do that, they can YouTube it
That's right.
And
I don't need to hold it here. I just need to know where to find it.
right. So now, I want to arm them for the life that they're gonna live.
Yeah.
And so I had problems with that. My deal was, hey, if as long as you're performing at a high level, I'm gonna let you really get away with a lot of that stuff. If not, then we're going back.
That's
to
how
old
that
school
was
stuff.
kind of our parenting style too, and still is.
So I'm school's still out on all of that, but I think I think the whole education system's kind of antiquated, man.
It's kind of antiquated.
I mean, we could be making a lot of people way better human beings than academic.
Oh,
I mean, seriously, after the 7th, 8th grade, academically, you got to learn to write a little better.
right.
If you're in the if you're in the STEMs channel, which is what 15%. Other than that, let's make better human beings, bro.
Sure.
Would you agree with that?
I agree. The challenge is let's say you've got kids who want to go into the big three, and what I think the big three right now are medicine, law, and in medicine I include doctors, nurses, physical therapists, right? Medical, law, and then STEM. That's what kind of seems to be the big three. Not that they're the only three, but they're the big three. Well, folks in that, they've got to navigate standardized test scores, and it just depends on how high a kid wants to go, and so they have to be able to navigate that test, which is really unfortunate, and that's a huge problem because high schools, they publish it, all the ones that I know of. Like, here's our average or median ACT score. And parents look at that. Okay, right. And for honors and AP, they've got this ACT score. Because today, the cost of going to college is so high, that can mean up to tens of thousands of dollars for parents' savings and kids' savings. And so I'm not sure if it's looking at it from the bottom up. But
you're getting your bang for your buck. If it's
That's right.
It's not like it used to be.
That's right. And it's been antiquated.
It's terrible.
The education system, the whole sage on the stage method, which I think schools are really, but education's a system, and right now this is a really important. It takes a decade to make lasting change in a school. It takes a minimum of 5 years. Like, you've got to go through a whole cycle of kids to make really lasting change, like these initiatives, and we see a lot of that. My wife complains about that in the public system. Like, don't give up on it after a year. A year's just not enough time. You've got to. Anyway, I know that's kind of off, but I mean, I could go off on the education system. But my son's in a traditional, education system at a private school. He is, very intelligent, very competent. And is able to handle that in multiple sports and do his thing. Still not sure on what he wants to do. That's the bigger issue that I see today in my work, because I work with these older teens and then they get to college, is we're not investing enough time. These career days, like, we're going to have career day. It needs to be career week. So there probably need to be 10 days throughout the year where you're allowing kids to go in maybe small groups and talk and giving them. And I know one of the things the schools of the Sacred Heart do, or at least the Academy does in Grand Coteau, is they spend their spring semester going shadow someone in a job. Like, they will spend time in their spring semester of their senior year. Like, that's the only way you're really going to find out,
All right. So, all right. My kids having anxiety. I'm going to send them to Roy. Roy, fix my kid. They got anxiety. By the way, and I got permission from them. So all 3 of my kids saw it.
Did you get permission?
I did get permission. So the question is this: which one of my 3 kids did I screw up the most?
Dee Dee. Dee Dee. I'm gonna go with that. No. Not screwed up.
I guess we'll find out in due
time.
No,
I keep. I'm like, my question that I sit back and wonder. So your wife's my doctor, and me and Misty, her nurse, talk about it often. I was like, which one of them do you think's going to be president? I was like, who's your money on? It depends on the day.
Well, this was my thought during it, is that as a parent, you can try to protect your child.
That's right.
or you can arm your child. And and
And you should do both. I think it's
you
both
should do
and.
both. But Dee Dee and I said we have to arm these children, and I'm not. First off, if I had your skills, they wouldn't listen to me anyway because I was their dad.
And I have
They're
my
not-
skills, and mine don't.
right?
So-
You know, so I'm like, okay, go see Roy, and so, and it's very confidential. I don't ask. You don't. You know, that's between them. Even though they were, and you know, they weren't they were minors at the time. It's their business. It's their life. So let's me and you talk about to parents out there, no matter what stage or age. You know, what's some just general advice when it comes to this anxiety-ridden generation,
Yeah.
and what at, you know, is there still a stigma around mental health?
There is.
Is
It's
it
lessening.
dissipating
It's
a
lessening.
little bit?
It is. No, it's really lessening, especially
Why
in the
is
teen
there
culture.
a stigma?
I
Does
think
it show
there's
a weakness
because
or something?
stigmas usually reveal a lack of understanding, and so they. I'll share it. Like I remember when a buddy of mine, I'd say I don't know. Yeah, I think I'd say Red's a friend, but we don't hang out. I just see him when I go to Red's Health Club. I remember when he got COVID, and I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Man," and he had a rough bout of COVID, and he goes, "And that's still 3 months, and I'm still like having brain fog." I was like, "I've had that for the last 3 years. Like I've had COVID 7 times, 6
Straight
times at
up
the
brain
time.
fog.
Straight up brain fog, man. Like straight up, and I'll have it 6 weeks to. I will have it 3 months after each time I've gotten it. And then maybe a residual day here and there. Mindy can see it. She goes, "Oh God, here's the COVID. It's a long COVID day." And I'll have to cancel my day because I don't get a lot of softballs these days. I get either very affluent and wealthy people who want me to see their kid for minor problems, but 80% of the people who can barely afford to see me, but they've got I can't go in there with brain fog. Like I got to be on it. And so Red and I were just talking, and I was like, "I have it." And he goes, "You get it?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I get it." He goes, "It doesn't make any sense to me. I would have never thought like this was, a deal." And so unless you've struggled with it, or someone you love and know well has really struggled with it, you really don't understand the physiological power of anxiety and depression. And stress is the single worst thing for the human body. Like stress will shut your body down, period.
But I mean, parents doesn't. It's hard to recognize. I mean,
It
I mean,
is.
like I thought, my kids were excelling in school, but I had one upstairs depressed through a time. Knew something was going on, but as a parent, I'm just like loving him through it.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to have been able to just say, "Hey, man, I want you to go talk to this guy."
Yeah, I want you to go talk to someone.
And so, and sometimes you just gotta let the natural thing go through and let them work it out as you did. You gave a great story of pushing through and working it out. How else do you discover who you are?
Boy, I would want for people to be able to push through it without all of the collateral damage that I had. And I think that parents in general wait too long.
But
for me,
your mother did not have the means.
no,
or
and
the
we
know-how.
didn't. There were no resources.
And you was that was an extreme
Absolutely.
case right there.
Yeah.
You're a case study, bro.
Absolutely. Look, there's a therapist on every block. There's more therapists with online degrees now, and you can shake a stick at.
But are they? And some of them probably doing more damage.
Some of
and
them are not
accelerating.
really naturally gifted at it, and you're right. And some of them aren't. I think they saw it as a business opportunity. But the vast majority of people in my profession get into it because they want to help people. But what parents need, and I don't know even how to say it without being self-serving, but I refer about 30% of my parents back home. I don't even want to bring the kid in because bringing the kid into my office is an intervention. If they want to come, great. But if the kid's going to be resistant, I've got lots of tools and gifts to lower that and make it a great experience for them. But it's an intervention. My preference would be But I tell parents, for me, I always meet with the parents first. It's going to cost you $300 to come and sit with me for 60 minutes. And in 30 minutes, I will probably have enough of a story to recognize and be able to tell if this is clinically significant, if they need to be in my office, or if there's a couple of tweaks you guys can make at home.
Do you ever run across a situation where the parents are going to compromise your clinic and you turn them down?
When you say, what do you mean by compromise?
Like that whatever you tell you and the child has and what you're working on, they're going to go home and the parents are going to sort of compromise with you.
That happens a lot, and so the therapeutic goal changes. I don't like. I'm not going to, and because that was the thing. My mom made a decision for me. It was the right decision, but which was to send me to private school. But it required her to work so much that she wasn't there. And at 50, that was the right decision. It had unintentional emotional consequences. And so some parents, like we parent from the inside out. And, we parent the way we were parented. And I used to think if I just get these logical parents in and I can just talk to them, I can explain it. But it goes way deeper than that. They're parenting out of their wounds, out of their beliefs. There's a family system that's going on that I don't understand. And so my job is to work with the kid, understanding that we're going to have some backflows, whatnot. Hopefully at times I can maybe convince the kid to let me, the kid, and the parent sit down and our parents, and do some family sessions. And those are always enlightening, and most of the time they go well. But yeah, I'm not going to abandon the kid. I don't. What I do tell the parents is if you don't, because they have a legal right to everything me and the kid talk about. I was like, if you're going to enforce that, you're ruining the therapeutic relationship.
That's kind of what I was getting.
Let's go elsewhere. Go elsewhere.
That's what I was saying.
I was like, if you need to know everything that me and the kid are saying, I was like, as a parent, I will let you know, obviously, what breaks the law. And if there's something that doesn't involve abuse, self-harm, or harm to others that they need to know, like there's a really serious problem, the kid's in a really compromised situation, I am going to work with the kid to get the kid and I to tell you. And a lot of times the kid will be like, no, why don't you just tell them? But I'm gonna get your kid to. I'm not gonna be handcuffed by pseudo confidentiality that I have with a minor.
So you have a minor in there. Do you generally have to measure the family function versus dysfunction to work with the kid? And with that, the question to you is, how do you define dysfunction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we all
that
have.
Gets tricky, right?
Yeah, we all have dysfunction, and certain people's dysfunction works for the system. And some of the dysfunction, especially during COVID, man,
that was brutal. Huh?
Oh, it was brutal. I mean, I know what happened in our house. I know what my kids had to watch us go through and me go through, and we're eating well, and then in 4 weeks there's nothing in the pantry. Like that had never happened because we couldn't afford to eat outside of what we had in the house at the time. They saw me have to go to school in tears and ask for tuition waivers for a couple of months till I had the money to be able to afford to pay the tuition. And that's just me. We all, successful people will do the best they can in public to not be a victim, right? I'm going to make it. I'm going to work through it. I've worked through harder things, and we mask that for our kids. But relationships were breaking. I think people went to substances. COVID was really good for destigmatizing mental health because people who had never struggled with anxiety or depression started having panic attacks and real depressive episodes, and so they got it. They're like, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah, okay.
Claustrophobia, isolation. And so that helped. But I can usually get a good idea, and I will really ask for it. We'll shoot the breeze for 10 minutes, and it'll be a casual conversation, and folks who have seen me know. And then, around minute 35 to 40, okay, all right. I was like, okay, I got a medal. I was like, ah. And look, We don't have it all together either. If you had a live cam inside of my house, the shit you would have seen over the last 23 years be special. Special. But like I'll start with, how do y'all get along? How do the primary caregivers get along? Do y'all fight? If so, how? And then I can tell they're resistant. I was like, okay, let me tell you how my wife and I fight. She'll criticize me, and I'll pick up my toys and I'll go in the room and slam the door and go home. And now everyone's like, oh, Dad's pissed and he's withdrawn. And can be mildly traumatic for the kids. And it's like, that's my negative pattern. And it frees them up to go, okay, yeah.
But not necessarily dysfunctional. It's just how the unit is functioning.
That's right.
But the children are interpreting here.
Correct.
They're saying,
That's
okay,
right.
This is the way it's supposed
That's
to
right.
be, or whatever.
And I remind you, I don't work with children. I work with adolescents. So the earliest I'll take them is 12.
Okay, fair enough.
So I can get, especially from the older ones can tell me a lot about the system.
Yeah, but isn't the wiring already done by the time you get to them in 12?
No wiring. The neuroplasticity, what we know about neuroplasticity, it's, the wiring. And I like working with older teenagers. So yeah, it's a little more myelinated. Those neural grooves are, myelinated and formed and deep. And so there are deep behavior patterns, and it's harder to make the changes. But sometimes I'm just getting the kid to be, it just depends on what's coming in the door. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the family system and everything. The social networks that kids are in, not just because of this, but are very intricate and very complex. And many adults don't fully understand how intricate some of these social relationships are, and how finicky kids can be, and how the balance and of social power can shift, and which kids have the power. I mean, I had a kid come in a while back and go, and this is a really popular kid, but he was talking about another kid, and he goes, I can't piss him off because he'll end me. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, he will take every friend I've got. I was like, no way. He goes, book it. He's got the power. And walked me through it, and I was like, tell me how that'll happen. Well, he'll say this to this person. And this is guys. This is like elementary math. You take this to girls, they're doing like high-level calculus with those social relationships, that all of the nonverbals and things like that. And so in appreciation, so I would say at least 30 to 40% of my kids are navigating that. And typically, these are kids that come from good homes where there's good, healthy relationships. They've been maybe a little more sheltered and protected, and they're going into the big bad world of high school.
Is this the new? I mean, if you just take human beings and evolution and just trying to make it in the world, let me know if you got to go.
I'm good. No, I'm good.
They're positioning themselves to be a good mate in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So is this part of that?
It's another 20% of my clientele.
So is that just part of pecking orders and showing, hey,
yeah,
I mean, because listen, nothing's more brutal than a middle school pack of girls,
bro.
I mean, it's like, wow.
Well, yeah, but boy, I would tell you that high school pack of girls, the consequences are just higher. But you'd be amazed when I worked with adults how many 35-year-old women would come in and we trace the source of their pain back to 6th grade. I was like, 6th grade girls are just brutal, man.
I'm going to shift on you a little bit. I'm becoming good friends with some of the Laotians, and they practice Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And fundamentally, they say, I'm going to jack this up, but that everyone has this anguish that they deal with. That life has this anguish. And fundamentally, the anguish comes from ignorance of yourself. And I just cannot quit playing that in my mind. And I'm like, we were raising children, and we try to set virtues and expectations and this and all these things. when, you know, they're interpreted it as, okay, I need to be this, how you're programming me. When Buddha says you have to almost erase everything to truly be truthful to yourself, to find out who you truly are. And that is the path to happiness and why you're here on earth. Um, and so to me, when you're getting the signals to be a certain way and it's away from your natural spiritual path, to me, that's what would create a lot of this anxiety and depression. I mean, what would you say to that?
Yeah, and I have a lot of respect for the tenets, some of the, tenets that I'm more familiar with in Buddhism. And again, it's so rich and deep. You know,
But
the,
it feels like
right, yeah, right.
And
there's
this
truth
has
in
been
it.
going
I
on
love
for
it.
thousands of years.
And Buddha would say, the Buddha said, the source of all pain is expectation. Right. Attachment. Yep. Attachment and expectation's a type of attachment. And so the way to let go of that is to remove yourself from all attachments. Now that's practically impossible. And Jesus spoke in those words too, and many other spiritual leaders do too, which they will give you, like, here's the perfected goal, knowing damn good and well that, like, you're probably not going to be able to reach that until the end of your life. But the striving toward that is going to make you better and better and happier and happier. And so what's so good about healthy religion, and a lot of it's not, what's so good about healthy...
That's another podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast, bruh. And a lot of it's not, and I want to disclaim that because I do deal with a lot of religious trauma, is to give us practices that help us to reconnect here, right? Reconnect here. And so much mysticism in Christianity, which I know more about, is they call it the divine indwelling. God is in here. He's out there, but he's in here. The good news is you can find him either way. If you find him out there, if you find God out there, because God's not a man, if you find God out there, that God will reveal to you the God that is in here. If you find him in here,
and whoever that is for the individual.
Right, that's exactly right.
We're not here to talk about that.
Yeah. I just have more familiarity with it, and Buddhism practices, in the Buddhist meditation, is the quieting of the mind. Right, which quiets
reducing
the
that
ego.
Chatter, get the chatter
and it would be amazing, and there've been books written on it, to see, Jesus and Buddha talk, because I feel like they would not disagree on all that much, and there's different ways of going about. Christian humility is silencing the ego. When you're humiliated, right, it's because you have your ego is involved, and that's where the anguish comes from. It's my attachment to the way this should turn out, to emotions I want to feel, right? And that's really where I was, right? I wanted to feel happy, and I couldn't experience that at that time, and I couldn't make peace with it, and that's where depression comes in too, the nurture side of that. But no, I think it's and so how do we help kids to do it? I can't sit down and logically these deep, like, Buddhism. These come from instilling practices like journaling, like being mindful, being present, being in the moment. Mindfulness is such a buzzword, but that's a lot of that comes out of Buddhism, and like, just, it's like one phrase they'll have: do the dishes. Only do the dishes.
Correct.
Don't think about your day. Don't worry about what's coming.
It's a form of meditation.
That's right.
Quieting the mind.
Do the dishes. And anything you do, just that. And that's why they say your whole life can become a meditation.
But you're making my point of inquiry is, okay.
That pulls me out of the moment.
Well, not only that. So now you have, the brain, my buddy Parrish Taylor says, something like 16 hits a minute of thoughts, a thought being a word or a photograph flowing through your mind that you have to process. So this even accelerates that.
It does.
And so it's this constant chatter, buzzing, interpretation. If you're thinking about, if your thoughts are in the past a lot, then your anxiety is on what happened. If if it's in the future, you worried about the sky falling, and then so why wouldn't we direct parents to some more of this older traditional type of meditation and quieting of the mind, and almost come up with these rituals, you know, like one ritual for my family was, we are sitting at this table and we're going to share this meal, and we're here for an hour, and that was a form of meditation, and um, so I think we can almost have to resurrect some of the older quieting techniques to learn how to turn down that chatter in your brain so you can start making some
That's right.
decent decisions.
I agree. I agree. And again, healthy religion, all of them, right? Not just the Christian religions. Healthy religion has always had like those types of practices that bring you in the moment. Like there's so many of them with beads, right? Christians, the rosary, Buddhism, it's prayer beads, and it just I'm gonna be in the moment, and I'm gonna either use this mantra, to be in the moment. Good ritual brings you in the moment. The smells, the bells, or whatever all is involved, the smoke, and all of that can grounds me in the moment, and it teaches me to be present. Wisdom literature reminds me of the importance of the present. It reminds me of things that are always true and points out pitfalls for us. And so, and family, one of the things we did that Mindy mentioned a few weeks ago to me, she goes, I think one of the things we did really well that enabled our family to be close was we didn't allow the boys to have TVs or electronics in their bedrooms, ever. Only Max's senior year, he was able to take his phone up. I was like, yeah, he's going to be on his own at Baton Rouge next year. So he needs to learn how to start. Yeah, Max is a freshman at LSU. Ben's a freshman at Turlings.
Oh my God!
I know, man.
That blows my mind.
I know. And Thomas is about to be a doctor, and Taylor is a practicing attorney.
Just like that, it happens.
It's so fast. So
here at the coffee house, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think part of the journey, what I'm trying to do to get back, is that if we take out religion and politics, you take it out of the deal, and bring human beings in to have conversations like me and you had this morning, and you look at the human side of it, the aspect side of it, there's a different connection there I'm finding. Like I've entered this sort of phase of my life where I'm researching, and I'm researching local, just from
gone deep.
Going
deep local.
I don't know how
as
deep
opposed to
Bob
live.
Luke can go.
Yeah.
But I'm studying the Creoles, studying and talking to historians from the African Americans, letting them write their version of history, talking to the Cajun story, talking to the Native Americans, getting their how were they encultured. The Laotians, speaking to a doctor, she's from Vietnam, came here from the fall of Saigon. So all of these things, we can really all lower, in my opinion, the overall anxiety as a community through just proper communication. And so if you take those two aspects out of it, and you're just sitting here over a cup of coffee, then to me, there's a different kind of therapy there that's taking place. So you've been on this journey since this concept came out with me. You've been a big supporter, and you've been talking about it. We'll wind this one down, but man, I loved it. You mind coming back?
Oh,
man?
Absolutely. We'll do bourbon next time.
We're gonna do
We'll
some
bourbon
old
next time
fashions
instead of the coffee house.
Oh yeah,
we'll bring the bourbon in.
That's a deal. A couple things. How do people follow you, and how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is today'steenager.com, or my first and last name, roypetitfils.com. I'm sure you could probably put that in the show notes. And then I think the best way, my cell is 337-654-9635. That's
That
my
was
office
ballsy,
line.
bro. I like it.
Yeah, 654-9635. And my email is my first and last name at yahoo.com, roypetitfils@yahoo.com.
Now, I noticed your podcast, you kind of slowed down.
Got COVID 7 times. I got COVID. Every time I kept trying to resurrect it, but a friend of mine and now podcasting has to kind of look like this.
Yeah.
So it can't look the way I used to do it.
And if I can address my viewers right here too, so we're taking on a different role at the cafe. It's called Cafe Chronicles. So get the app. Just go to the app store, Cafe Détente, and then you're going to see the tiles. And it's like reading a newspaper, but you don't have to read. It's going to be audio and videos. I think Roy said he's going to join in on it and start giving some pointers and some different talks. Use your wisdom to help our community, man. I mean, what you know and all those things, they people love it. They eat it up. I want to really thank you for being so honest and vulnerable.
You're welcome, and thank you for hearing it and being such a a great host and a really good friend to me.
I love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
And
your whole family.
Thank you, babe. Same here. And I hope people that are watching this encourage you to. It's okay to be vulnerable. Just get out there, arm your children with knowledge. Arm your children. Talk mental health. Talk mental. When I say health, to make it healthy. And a lot of times, kids just need to be able to talk about it and have a vent. And I'm hoping the cafe opens up and shows them. We need to start showing them how we can have these great conversations, and they look at that as, okay, that's normal. I'm not going to go chew somebody up on a website or rip somebody up here and there. You sit down and go talk. I miss those days. I think we were raised in the perfect time for me. I love going in, and you have to go work the room and do those things. I have way more hope for this generation. I think they have a lot more of that than we give them credit for.
And I think they're more uniquely equipped to deal with the way the world is moving and the way the world is changing than we do. And like guys like you and I are trying to stay on top of those types of things. Hence, like doing the podcast and getting an app. And so I've got lots of hope for this generation. Lots of hope.
It's just jetting in my mind. I was really hoping when you was talking about the COVID days and you was going down, I brought you that rice and gravy and beans, man. I thought you was going to say, dude, that was the pivotal.
That really was depressing because my rice and gravy was so far inferior to that. I was like, okay, I need this more, and I need you to teach me how to get mine to taste like that.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Roy Petitfils.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yep, thank you too,
we'll
brother.
see you soon, man.
Thank you, man.
All right, that's it. We'll see y'all next time.